Hey everyone, my name is Michael Coker. I'm the mayor of the city of Mulberry, and today we have a special guest. Commissioner Chris Adkins of the Planning Commission is here to join us. He's going to give us some intel of what's been going on behind the scenes with the city. Before we jump in, let's kind of start. If you could, Commissioner, just kind of introduce yourself, talk a little bit about where you are, where you're from, and kind of how you got to Mulberry.
All right. Thanks for having me on.
My pleasure.
My name's Chris Adkins. I'm on the Planning Commission with the city of Mulberry. My wife and I have lived in Atlanta area for 20 years now. So we moved down from North Carolina up in the mountains.
Nice.
And I think it took me about 10 years of being down in this area that I started calling it home. And then ever since, we just sort of we just enjoyed it, and we love being down here. And when we moved to the area, I'm a commercial general contractor and developer, so I've done a lot of projects all around, and sort of had my head down just doing projects for years, and then had an interest in just sort of giving back to the community. And so the Planning Commission just seemed like a good fit for me, and so there's where I'm at.
Awesome. And obviously, when I first met you, right, I was introduced to you as obviously somebody who's kind of a community leader, right? Who you do a lot in this community, even before Mulberry started.
Yes.
Can you talk a little bit more about some of your involvement, maybe in things around the county or around Metro Atlanta before you started with Mulberry?
Yeah, so as I've sort of tried to expand out and do more stuff with, there's some nonprofits and stuff I've became involved with, and then really just trying to get out and spend more time within the community. I do the tree commission with Gwinnett County. I'm in leadership Gwinnett's class this year, and so just try to do a lot of stuff that I'm active in the community and can sort of give back to the community now that I have probably a little more time than I did.
One of the things, obviously, you mentioned you're a developer, right? I'm sure there's a lot of people in Mulberry that are panicked when they hear that there is a developer on the Planning Commission.
That's right.
Obviously, that gives you a unique perspective. Obviously, when we look at the Planning Commission and what the Planning Commission does, can you talk a little bit about what the Planning Commission does first, and then kind of how your experience as a developer might be different than some of the other commissioners?
Right. So a Planning Commission, basically we are a recommending body. So it is our job to take a look at zoning cases that come through and look at it as a whole, look at it against our comp plan, and make a sort of recommendation to the mayor and council. Sort of an interesting way that's a little different than probably the other planning commissioners is because I am a developer and contractor. I've spent a lot of time on the opposite side, presenting things to a planning commission and city council. So I think that has gave me a perspective and been able to look at different cities and different counties and municipalities and how they do things, and just sort of kind of understanding what we're kind of going into. So it's very interesting being on this side of the table. And there probably is sometimes people go, well, why is the developer on it? But it does give me a lot of perspective and knowing, sort of how contracts work, how typical planning and zoning go.
And obviously, for those that do have that kind of fear, right, of, oh no, like we've got this developer guy, he's going to, be running through his developer buddies or this or that. I mean, can you talk a little bit about kind of what your vision for Mulberry is as a Planning Commission member, kind of what your thoughts are, what your opinions are, and how that might influence your kind of understanding of the bigger UDO and the process in Mulberry?
Sure. I think, for me, I think it's very important as a planning commissioner to listen to what the residents are saying. And so, we know that with the formation of the city of Mulberry, there was a lot of talk about just some of the larger developments and stuff in. And so the residents gave a lot of their opinions. And so I think it's very important to look at that. And as the mayor and council put together the UDO, then that plan sort of takes in all that. So a lot of what I look at is going, what does our comp plan say? What are the residents saying? And try to look at it and go, what does this community really want to see here?
And as you've kind of had this experience with the Planning Commission, can you obviously talk a little bit for the people who listen, explain to them for maybe somebody, they've gotten a letter, right, that says, hey, this development or this application has been filed, and I want to be more involved. I want to kind of, talk about this project, talk about the effects that it might have on the community. Given your perspective as both a developer and as a planning commission member, what advice would you give that person?
Yeah, so I would say, if you see a project that's coming through that's next to you, or just in the community in general, the best thing is to do is to reach out to the planning commission, reach out to the council members, and sort of express what your thoughts are, and just try to just show up. I mean, showing up's probably the most important thing. So when we have these meetings, there's a section in there that's just for the community to show up and be able to give their input, whether it's good feedback or bad feedback. And, we want to hear that, and that makes an impact on what we do. And so we want that impact and to understand what the community wants to see.
And I know sometimes these developers will come in and they'll do neighborhood meetings too, or some maybe outside of the planning commission or outside of the council meetings. They'll host these town halls, I guess you could call it. Can you talk about what those are? Maybe what advice you'd give to individuals that want to go and maybe speak to the developer directly? What would you recommend in those situations?
Yeah, I think in those cases, it's a great opportunity when developers do propose that they can come in and hear the residents. What I always like to say is that, when you go to something like that, it's easy sometimes just to go in and just say, well, traffic or this. But just sort of come to the developers what you do want to see. And I think that's important. A lot of times, when a developer's going into an area, they're just looking at it based on what their thoughts that the community wants. But given your input, it may be that you can go in and talk to a developer and say, hey, this is really what the community wants to see. And it could, influence what the developer ends up presenting to the planning commission and council.
Have you seen that firsthand where, individuals will show up at a town hall and will say, hey, we really wanted some more open space or park space? Is that something that's common? The developer will take that feedback.
Absolutely.
And then we'll add it in. Okay.
Absolutely. And I think that's an important part is it's easy sometimes just to look at the negative side of it. But, really when a developer's doing this, they're really trying to get feedback to understand what the community wants. Because the reality is if they're building a development within a community, they want to rely on that community and people that's wanting to come into that community for a reason. And so that input can be very good input.
Okay. And then as you kind of sit on the planning commission, right? And I understand you were just made this year, you were going to be the chairman of the board. So I appreciate that. Right. So as the chairman, and as kind of applications come before you, if I'm a developer, what information do you as a planning commissioner want to see? When they show up, or let's say I'm not a developer. Let's say I'm just an individual. I want to do something with my property. Can you help kind of prep them through that process? What can they expect? What information should they have when they show up? What should they talk about? What do you recommend?
So I think, I would say the first steps is when you're planning on something to look at the comp plan and understand what that area is designated for. So come in there with a plan that fits within that, because that's the easiest thing to approve is something that fits within the city's comp plan already. And I think the more information, the better. I always say, like, if you're a developer going in front of, planning commission and council, you need to be able to answer all the questions. You need to be able to show a good site plan that shows what it's going to look like, how it's going to affect the community, how you're dealing with things like traffic, how you're dealing with, ingress, egress, cross development where you're going from one parcel to the next. You just want to be able to show as much as you can. And like if you're doing a housing development or anything, show what that exterior is going to look like. Let's see what that is so that there's a better understanding going into it of what the final product's going to be. Because the more you understand that final product, the better it is that we can all come to an agreement.
Yeah, and I would agree with that. I mean, I think the more renderings you can have, the more site plans, the more elevations is what we call them a lot of times, that deal with, what the side of the buildings are going to look like. I mean, all that helps us kind of make decisions a lot easier. And then kind of, obviously you've completed kind of 1 year on the planning commission so far. Obviously, we've kind of got our feet wet. Things are kind of churning and burning now. Obviously, as we look forward, as you are the new chairperson, can you talk a little bit about maybe, procedures that happen at meetings, how a meeting typically operates? Again, just so whether you're coming to speak in favor or against a specific development, what can the public expect when they come to one of your meetings?
Sure. So, First of all, I'll say, I think sometimes the public has a little bit of a fear of coming to meetings like
Mm.
this and speaking. But I will say, as especially with us as we're growing, it's a very comfortable setting.
Mhm.
It's not some of the grandeur of some of the big platforms and stuff. So it's a very comfortable setting. So when we open a meeting up, we give time for public comments, that's just random public comments, and then as we go into each case, we allow a time period for speaking for and for against a
Mm.
project. And so again, sort of going back to that development side, if you are a developer, um, bring people and encourage people that are for a project. So that's always an important to be able to weigh both sides of that and get both sides. So
What about if let's say I'm a resident, and let's say there's 20 people in my neighborhood that want to show up and talk about, maybe we're opposed to a specific
mhm.
project. Is there anything procedurally that you would recommend for those 20 people? Obviously, do you want all 20 people getting up and
Right.
speaking? How do you want them to do that? What's the most effective way?
I think the most effective way in that is for those people just to get together and try to come up with a consensus on what they would like to tell the planning commission. And so, have maybe one speaker, two speakers, because, we are limited on the amount of time that we can hear from for and against. So the more information that we can get, and so rather than just having each individual person try to give their thoughts, if the group of people can get together, come up with some talking points and have one or two speakers, then you're going to be able to convey the most information to us in a timely manner.
Yeah, I agree with that too. I've always said at or at the council meetings, I've said that sometimes I feel like the most effective groups are where they pick the best 1 to 2 speakers of
Right.
their group, right?
Right.
And let them speak on behalf of all of the other
That's right.
residents. And obviously, if you've met ahead of time and you've kind of bullet pointed all those items, they can get up
Hmm.
there and kind of present that. I think that's
Right.
much more effective,
It is.
moving forward. Well, kind of as we continue and as we talk a little bit more about the Planning Commission, you've mentioned a couple things that I'm not sure everybody's going to know what they are. You mentioned a comp plan, you mentioned a UDO. Can you talk a little bit about what those are and how they guide your decisions?
So the comprehensive plan is basically a plan that's put together by the council and mayor that sort of identifies the areas of the city that they're sort of laid out for different things. So some of your areas of the city already has more density, more retail, so those areas are going to sort of fall within that. There's areas of the city that are more rural right now. The idea is to keep those that way,
Mhm.
and so it identifies areas that we can try to keep that urban feel to it, try to keep some of that idea. And then, for probably a lot of people know that, one of the things at Mulberry is, talking about some of the equestrian stuff, because we do have an equestrian pretty strong area, and sort of to go off of that. And so to lay out areas that you're basically trying to, positively and intentionally develop those, so that you're not just building a big mix of stuff all over the city with no thought process behind.
Can you talk a little bit about that equestrian thing? That's an interesting thing you brought up. Obviously, can you talk a little bit? I know that you were appointed from District 5,
Mhm.
right? Which is one of the more rural districts in the city.
Mhm.
Can you talk a little bit more about District 5 and kind of that equestrian vibe and how that got started and kind of your thoughts on that?
So I'm in District 5. My house literally looks over a horse farm. I've got horses eat grass out of my backyard every day. So, and then, with little Mulberry Park right there, you do have horse trails and stuff in there, and so there is a lot of equestrian already
Mhm.
in the community, and specifically back where I'm at, towards the back of it. And so I think it's trying to keep that feel of what Mulberry has felt like before it
Mhm.
was ever a city. Just when in that rural Gwinnett County, and just sort of trying to keep that feel. And as Gwinnett County keeps growing and growing and growing, we were really the only kind of land left over that this was even possible in.
Sure.
So it's very nice to be able to say, hey, can we keep some of that rural feel to it? And the question just really fits in, because that was something that's pretty strong already.
Awesome. Well, I bet that's beautiful to wake up, drink your coffee, watch the horses. I would love that.
I sit back there almost every morning.
Oh yeah, that would be a dream for me.
Yeah.
Well, as we kind of wrap up, if you could, number one, tell everybody kind of how, if they want to get in touch with you, right? If they got some questions about a planning commission, or maybe they're District 5, they want to talk to you or talk to you as the chairman. What's the best way for them to reach you? And then, is there anything else that you feel like people should know, either about you, about the planning commission, or about Mulberry?
So, if you go to the city of Mulberry, my contact information, email's on there. So definitely anybody that wants to reach out to me, feel free to pull up my email, shoot me an email. And, I'm always happy to talk to everybody, especially, about cases and what comes up and what thoughts and expansion, and really from both sides, if somebody's wanting to present something or somebody's got a concern with it. So I think probably the thing that I would like to say about the sort of planning commission and me and the other planning commissioners is it's a volunteer job. We don't get paid to do this. So, the reality is we're not them. We're the community. We're the voice of the community. We're the ears of the community. So the reality is, we want to hear what the community has to say, and we are part of that community. And so that's what our job is, to sit there and be the eyes and ears of the community and try to filter stuff through. And so come to us, show up to the meeting, send us an email, see me in public, ask me a question.
Well, first off, I appreciate you serving the city. I'm glad. I was going to bring that up if you didn't, that it is a volunteer position and this is 100% public service. And so I appreciate you. Yeah. I appreciate all of you on the Planning Commission. I will add that, you guys on the Planning Commission are the council's, eyes and ears in the community, mm-hmm. right? You guys are the ones that do the deep dive into these applications, into these projects, and talk to the residents. So we know, hey, the work's been done. Right. They've talked to the developer, they've talked to the residents, and we know that they are recommending what they believe is best for this community. And so thank you for that. Mm-hmm. Thank you for your service to this community. And we appreciate everybody out there for following along and listening. And if you like getting these updates, learning more about what's going on in the city of Mulberry, what's going on with the Planning Commission, I'd encourage you to like and subscribe. And so until next time, I continue to look forward to the great things that are happening within the city of Mulberry. Thanks again for being here.
Thanks, Michael. Appreciate it.